Good morning, everyone, and welcome along to the Blood Red Morning Bulletin. I'm returning as host Patrick Smith after a couple of weeks off, and it's good to be back getting stuck into some Liverpool news. Joining me is Liverpool.com's Dave Comerford. Dave, how's things?
Good, yeah. I'm excited to see the new players in pre-season today. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, of course. We'll have a little preview of the players because the main first team squad, ones who are on international duty, will be returning to Liverpool training today, and some new faces as well, such as Alexis McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai. Some very exciting news. Of course, the Blood Red podcast has been delayed yesterday. That'll be airing today on Tuesday, so you can catch that one later as well for a huge preview of Liverpool's return to training in the season ahead. But for now, me and Dave will get stuck into some transfer news. Let's start then with some centre-backs. Now, we know Liverpool are potentially looking in the market, according to rumours, for that left-sided centre-back. A couple of names we'll go through, Levi Colwill and Micky van der Ven. Let's start with Micky van der Ven, shall we, Dave? Because, Spurs have been linked with him all summer. Ange Postecoglou seemingly wanting to get some business done early. And Tottenham are reportedly closing in of the signing of the Wolfsburg defender. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. He's made it clear that Spurs are in advanced talks. Is it a bit of a shame to be letting Van der Ven go, do you think, Dave? I mean, I just think of that clip we've all seen doing the rounds on Twitter. It seems like he could have been a potentially good player on the clock with that pace and the high line.
Yeah, I think he would have been a good fit. I think, last season he played as a left back a few times, which intrigued me quite a bit because I think it meant he would have been quite a good fit for the new system in terms of having to maybe play as that kind of... He could have maybe been that sort of left back on the side of a four and then slotting into the three when Trent moved into midfield. I know a lot of people think that Robertson's not necessarily a good fit in that sense. But yeah, so it looked like it could work like tactically. Obviously, the quality of the player himself, you can't really judge until he actually gets to the Premier League. Looks like that will be with Tottenham now. And it made sense as well, I guess, in the sense that, Schmack could obviously had... the connections at Wolfsburg previously, so you wondered if it might be kind of a pretty straightforward deal for him to do in that sense. The one thing I would say on this is, it's not really clear what Liverpool want to do with centre-backs at the moment because it looks like Van der Ven's going to Tottenham. Inacio is the one who's named as a target. Very quiet on him, to be honest. And obviously there's Levi Colwill as well. I don't know if we're going to speak about him this morning, but that one doesn't necessarily feel realistic at the moment. It feels like more of a bit of a dream transfer. So Liverpool, I think, will sign a centre-back. I think they know they definitely need one, but it's just not really clear who the plan A is going to be at the moment because I think there's sort of options being taken off the board rather than being added to it right now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, the thing with Van der Ven as well, I mean, he's a player that would have definitely needed to be moulded to become a Jurgen Klopp player because he's got the natural physical attributes. He's big, he's absolutely rapid, as we've all seen, but he is quite rash, isn't he? I mean, the clips I've seen of him, I know it's not much to go off, but he seems like a bit of a rash defender, flies into tackles, sometimes misses them, commits a fair few fouls. But I mean, I'm just going to go slightly off piece. We're going to be talking centre-backs, but you mentioned Andy Robertson there. There's been a sort of strange shift this summer, hasn't there, because of the new system Liverpool have adopted. There's lots of calls that maybe Robertson isn't the right player for that formation. I mean, what's your take on that, Dave? Because obviously, when they're defending as a three, which they will be doing in transition, Robertson tucks in as a sort of left-sided centre-half. Do you think they maybe do need to look at someone more defensive, such as a Van der Ven or a Colwill or an Inacio who's played at left-back and is actually more solid, at least physically?
Well, I think there's a case to do that against certain teams, really. Just to be able to have the option, really, to play with that kind of basically the converted centre-back as opposed to the converted full-back in that role. And I was literally writing yesterday that, we see similar iterations of this system at Man City and at Arsenal, with obviously Stones moving into midfield, Zinchenko at Arsenal, and then that's kind of counterbalanced by having kind of natural centre-backs like Ben White or Nathan Ake on the other side of the defence. Liverpool don't have that, they didn't last season. Certainly they were trying to do it with Robertson instead. So the question for me is, are they going to try this bolder approach, or are they going to try and bring themselves more in line with City and Arsenal? I think that Klopp is going to try and do things differently. I think he is going to use Robertson for the majority of games, still the vast majority. And to be honest, I think it's a bit disrespectful from a lot of supporters to to not put him in their kind of lineups for next season to suggest that he needs to be dropped. I understand the reasons for that. I just think that when you've got a player as good as him, he should be someone that you accommodate, you build around, rather than just like leave by the wayside. And part of me wonders if there's sort of a thing of, does this new exciting system that's kind of in fashion and Robertson's maybe not, because we're so familiar with him now, maybe people are just like, they crave that new face, that new idea. But Robertson, I think, deserves a bit more sort of loyalty, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with it. I think there's definitely a left-sided centre-back's going to be coming in. So I do think there is going to be that option to do things differently. But for me, Robertson should be staying in the side, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to. I mean, the disrespect he's had this summer has been baffling to me, to be honest, because he's been one of, if not in a biased opinion, one of the best left backs in the world for the last 5 years. He's absolutely amazing. He offers you so much. And I think, to be honest, defending in that three, he's actually pretty handy because he's quick. It's always going to be defending in transition when they are as a three. So you're not going to be facing, a big ball over the top towards him. It's going to be those balls in behind that he'll deal with because he's quick enough and he reads the game well enough, in my opinion. So I'll be very surprised. But then, of course, you look at the way City play, which Liverpool are sort of trying to adopt, and you've got Nathan Ake playing in that position, who is a centre-half. So maybe Klopp will look to change to that in some matches, in some situations. Obviously, it depends on the game because there are teams that are going to go long. I mean, I think it was the Forest game at home, wasn't it, with those giant throw-ins and the balls in behind. That may be a game where you play a centre-back in that left-back role to sort of counteract that when you're in that sort of transition with the long balls over the top. But anyway, let's go back to the centre-back chat, shall we? So it looks like Van der Ven is one they're going to miss out on. Levi Colwill is the next one, Dave. I mean, we are going to talk about him, of course. I think he'll be coming up with quite a lot on the pod. There was a video of him and Noddy Madueke at full time after the Euros under-21 final. We've seen, he said he's going to speak to his family. He's going to speak to everyone and make a decision. And the Chelsea players are returning to training. I think he's obviously going to have a bit more of an extended break. But what do you expect of Levi Colwill's future then, Dave? I mean, do you think there's any chance Liverpool do go for him, or do you reckon they'll stick it out and take his chance at Chelsea?
Well, to be honest, I think he's being very non-committal at the moment. I mean, obviously, you mentioned that video with Madueke after the full-time whistle on Saturday. Then the comments afterwards, which is sort of like, I need to have these talks, work out what's going on. I think essentially he wants Pochettino to say to him that he's kind of his guy for this season, that he's going to be kind of a starting centre-back, because I think, feels justifiably that he's proven worthy of that role. I mean, England didn't concede a goal, I think, the whole tournament. No. And obviously that is a team achievement, but it reflects very well, I think, especially on the centre-backs. So, yeah, I think that's the thing, is he wants those assurances. And then if he doesn't get them, I think Chelsea want to tie him down to a new long-term contract. I think if Colwill doesn't feel like, you look at it, they've got Badia Shield and Fofana. If he thinks that those two centre-backs are kind of favoured long-term, then I think he's going to look at that and say, right, well, why would I sign a new deal in that sense? And then if he's sort of saying rejecting a new contract, if he's not kind of open to negotiations, that's when I think Chelsea might, not necessarily, they wouldn't invite offers by any stretch, but they might be more willing to, I suppose, listen to them. Although you can expect them to drive a very, very hard bargain, especially if they've got a Premier League rival coming to the table.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he's going to cost an absolute premium, but I'm not sure if he'll be the starting centre-back at Chelsea, because as you say, they've got Badia Shield and Fofana, and for the meantime, at least, Thiago Silva is their best centre-back, so he's going to play when he's fit and available. I mean, being fourth potentially in the pecking order doesn't bode well for him. I mean, yeah, as you say, the under-21 Euros, I mean, the team of the tournament's been announced. Unsurprisingly, Levi Colwill is in there alongside Hardwood Bellis and James Trafford, the two City players. I think Trafford's going to Burnley in a £15 million move or something. But Curtis Jones is also named in midfield in the team of the tournament, Dave. I'd like to give that a bit of acknowledgement because he's been absolutely fantastic the past 5 or 4 months, you could say, for Liverpool. And he's carried that form right in to this championship win with England, hasn't he?
Yeah, really, really good summer for Jones. And it's interesting that he's been able to sort of change the narrative a bit. I think a lot of people have looked at it and thought he's had this sort of really career best run. Liverpool have brought McAllister in. He's potentially going to be out the side now. But I think what he's done is he's sort of instead changed it to Klopp's going to have a big dilemma in terms of how to give him enough game time, because we've waited so long for Jones to take the step, really, from being kind of a young talent to, like, you know, a top young player. And it feels like we might be kind of witnessing that now. Obviously, we got to see if he can sustain it for a whole season. I think fitness will play a part in that. Hopefully, he's kind of overcome some of the strange issues he's had. I mean, people are sort of obviously skeptical, I suppose, about, you know, you mentioned team of the tournament there. People might say, oh, well, this is kind of, this is junior football. This is under 21s, you know. He's not necessarily had kind of that senior test for England yet. But I think it's worth noting that, you know, these are the very best kind of under 21 players about. I mean, you just look at some of the squads that people who are playing quite regularly for some top clubs in Europe. So Champions I think
League clubs, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, it is a very good achievement for Jones. I think he lit up the tournament. I think I've seen people on social media make the point that if he wasn't playing for Liverpool and he played like that, then people would be sort of demanding that we sign him. And I think that that is a point that holds a bit of weight in all this. So I honestly think that, you know, the situation, I mean, last year Liverpool went into the season relying on Jones, and for basically 3/4 of it, he wasn't necessarily able to live up to that faith for various reasons. I think now they are going to rely on him again in terms of providing that sort of depth option. But this year, it's sort of it feels like quite a luxury situation all of a sudden with, you know, McAllister probably will be the first choice in that position. But then you've got sort of the best version of Curtis Jones we've seen so far, someone who's very young and someone who can go on to you know, quite big heights by the looks of it, supporting him. So yeah, all of a sudden it looks pretty good in that department of midfield.
I mean, we've always known how amazing Jones is on the ball. You know, he's such a great dribbler, really good passing, handy with a shot too. But he's defensively improved for me over the past couple of months. I mean, this is the thing that you mentioned there. You know, lots of fans, if he wasn't playing for Liverpool, would be calling to sign him because they're desperate to sign 3 or 4 midfielders. You know, they'd be screaming to sign him. But they're forgetting that Jurgen Klopp improves players that are already at clubs. That's what he does. You know, look at the development of Harvey Elliott over the past 12 months. I mean, Curtis Jones is going through that exactly now. Klopp turns these players into world-class midfielders. I mean, I know he signed someone like a Gini Wijnaldum, but when they signed Gini Wijnaldum, he wasn't levels above the level of Curtis Jones now. Look how amazing he became. It really wouldn't surprise me to see Jones kick on this season. And of course, you know, we've all seen the Lee Carsley tactics doing the rounds on Twitter. And that double pivot as well could be very handy for Liverpool if he's competent enough to play there when they're, say, playing in the Europa League match and they want to really attack the opposition at Anfield. But anyway, another midfielder we'll move on to and to round off the show. Transfer rumor again. Romeo Lavia. I mean, you spoke about him yesterday, Dave, didn't you, on the podcast? But according to the Daily Mail, take that with a pinch of salt, they state that Chelsea remain interested in the Belgian and that Arsenal and Manchester United are waiting in the wings. Now, this is going to obviously drive his price up, Dave, isn't it? What's the maximum you'd be looking at paying for Romeo Lavia? And do you think Liverpool actually need to sign him?
Maximum I'd look at paying, I think. Look, the difficulty with this is that Southampton know that they can probably get 40 million off Man City next year because of his buyback clause.
Yeah.
So realistically, it's going to be minimum 40. I think if there was a deal done for sort of a guaranteed 40 mil, maybe 5 million add-ons, that's the kind of fee I could see Southampton accepting. I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world. I mean, me and Matt spoke yesterday about whether he's needed. I think Matt made the point that you could see Bajcetic playing as a number 8 instead. So, you know, you can fit both players in long term. I'm not sure about that just because it's a little bit more advanced now, but I'd certainly be willing to try it. I think I'd be sort of willing to, while I would have reservations over this deal compared to some of the other ones we've done, I'd be more sort of a mind to just sort of see how it pans out and see if kind of my expectations are subverted a bit, because Klopp will often do that. So I think generally I'd be pretty happy with that. And just on the point about interest and on those other teams, I think what's interesting is, you know, McAllister, Liverpool got in very early, activated that exit clause. No one else obviously activated the release clause for Szoboszlai by the deadline either. So essentially they've had a free run at 2 players up to this point. This time it looks like, I think this one is going to rumble on a little bit. But when it comes to a head, I think it's a possibility that there could be a battle between Liverpool and Chelsea. You know, you mentioned Arsenal, maybe even Manchester United there as well. So this one, may not be as clean as some of Liverpool's other transfers. I think we're seeing that already from the fact that it's been, I think, a couple of weeks now of these links, maybe a bit longer, and there's not really been any major progress. It feels like there's a bit of an impasse at the moment, and maybe there's a case for Liverpool to go and sort out their centre-back need and then return to this one later in the window. Because I definitely think that while Liverpool need that extra option in the midfield to challenge Fabinho, it's probably sort of lower priority. If there was sort of 4 deals that were done, I'd say that's probably the lowest priority overall. So that would be my sort of approach with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be a lot clearer. I mean, I don't think they should sign him at all. I really don't get the hype around it, in my personal opinion. I mean, I'm surprised that they're looking at 40 million upwards. I mean, it'd be an absolute no-go for me to sign him for that much. I just don't think they need Romeo Lavia. I mean, as you said there, Bajcetic obviously will be the understudy to Fabinho this season. We'll hopefully see a lot more of him. I just don't know where Lavia would fit in there because he'd be taking away Bajcetic's game time. He's not really going to threaten Fabinho to be a starter straight from the off. It's just a bit of a baffling one for me, to be honest, Dave. I think that money would be much better spent on getting someone who's perhaps a right back, as the comments are saying. They're screaming out for someone who can cover Trent or that left-sided centre-half. I'd be prioritising that all day long over Romeo Lavia. But now that I've said that, they'll definitely surprise me and probably sign him by the end of the week when how these things work. But anyway, yeah, we'll leave the show there. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the Blood Red YouTube channel. We're, of course, live every day from 10 a.m, every weekday, 10 a.m, and, of course, on Liverpool.com, Facebook, and Twitter. Make sure, as well, you're keeping an eye across Liverpool.com for the brilliant articles from our writers like Dave. And, of course, the Liverpool Echo site has plenty of articles there too. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Blood Red podcast will also be today on Tuesday, later on this afternoon, so keep an eye out for that one dropping. But yeah, from myself, Patrick Smith, and Dave Comerford, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you again soon.